Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're really getting into something fundamental, what actually works when we interact with people.
Yeah, it's a huge question, isn't it?
It really is. Is it about, being genuinely interested, having that inner sincerity? Or is it more about knowing the right things to do, mastering the techniques?
And Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People is such a perfect lens for this, right? Because it sits right at that intersection.
Exactly. Is it a guide to being truly empathetic, or is it, well, a manual for effective social maneuvering? That's the debate we want to stage today.
It's a tension people have wrestled with forever in philosophy, psychology, leadership, everywhere. We all want to connect better, get ahead, lead effectively.
Right.
Carnegie offers these really clear, actionable steps, but the why behind them and how we interpret that why, that's where it gets fascinating and maybe a little tricky.
Are they shortcuts to real connection, or could they be tools for performing connection, maybe even manipulating it?
That's what we're going to unpack. We'll look at the material you've shared,
Hmm.
drawing out these different perspectives, not aiming for a single answer, maybe, but definitely a deeper understanding.
Yeah, absolutely. And this isn't just, book club chat. This hits home. It's about how we build trust in our teams, our families, how we inspire people,
Or fail to.
or fail to, exactly. Why do some people just seem to click while others, well, they try, but it feels off? Understanding this character versus technique thing is key. It's not just what you do, it's who you are when you do it.
So true.
Okay, so let's start with the case you're building from the inside out. This argument says, basically, that real lasting social success comes from your core, your authentic self.
Yeah, who you genuinely are.
Right. It's suggesting that the techniques, the things you do, only really land properly if they're coming from that sincere place inside.
Exactly. And Stephen Covey in The 7 Habits really drills down on this. He talks about the character ethic versus the personality ethic.
Okay, what's the difference there?
Well, he's pretty blunt. He says he's basically never seen lasting solutions to problems, lasting happiness and success that came from the outside in. It just doesn't stick, apparently.
So superficial fixes don't work long term.
That's his whole point. He argues strongly for an inside-out approach. You have to start first with self. Even deeper, he says, start with the most inside part of self, with your paradigms, your character, and your motives.
Wow, okay, so connecting that to Carnegie, if you're, say, smiling because the book told you to, but you don't actually feel any warmth.
Then the character ethic would say it's probably not truly effective, right? Or at least not sustainable. The genuine interest, the respect that has to come first. Then the smile, or remembering the name, becomes a natural outward sign of that inner state.
Or it's just a performance.
Not just a performance. It's the difference between acting friendly and being friendly.
That sounds right, but let's be real, changing your fundamental character, being the right person, that feels like a massive undertaking. Where do you even start, and is that enough? Don't we need some practical tools too?
Oh, it's definitely hard work, no question. But Covey gives some pretty concrete examples to make it less abstract.
Okay, like what?
Like, if you want a happy marriage, the advice isn't some technique, date night formula or something. It's be the kind of person who generates positive energy and sidesteps negative energy. It's an internal shift.
So focus on yourself first.
Yes. Or if you want your teenager to cooperate more, the focus is on you becoming a more understanding, empathic, consistent, loving parent.
Right, change your approach.
And the big one, if you want to be trusted in business, in life, anywhere, the core advice is simply be trustworthy.
It seems so obvious, but it's profound.
It is, because it shows how the external result, what Covey called the public victories, like trust or cooperation, flow directly from that internal work, the private victory. It's not about faking it, it's about becoming it.
So applying this to a Carnegie technique, like remembering someone's name, how does that fit? Is just doing it enough?
Well, from this inside-out view, why you do it matters hugely. If you remember someone's name because you genuinely value them as an individual, because you want to acknowledge their identity, that's a principle like respect in action.
Okay.
And that act, remembering the name driven by respect, becomes what Covey calls a deposit into the emotional bank account.
Ah, the emotional bank account. That's such a useful metaphor.
Isn't it? He defines it as the amount of trust that's been built up in a relationship. It's the feeling of safeness you have with another human being.
Right, like a currency of trust.
Exactly. And you make deposits through basic things: courtesy, kindness, honesty, and keeping my commitments to you. When that account balance is high, trust is high.
And communication gets easier.
Massively easier. Covey says it becomes easy, instant, and effective. You can even make mistakes, and people give you the benefit of the doubt because there's this underlying trust reserve. You're not an offender for a word.
So if Carnegie's advice, remembering names, showing interest, comes from genuine kindness, it's like making deposits.
Precisely. They reinforce that feeling of safety and respect. It's doing the right thing for the right reason, which leads to tangible positive outcomes.
But what if you're not making those deposits? Or worse, making withdrawals?
Then the picture changes dramatically. Withdrawals happen through things like discourtesy, disrespect, cutting you off, overreacting, ignoring you, betraying your trust.
All the things that erode relationships.
Exactly. And when that happens, the emotional bank account gets overdrawn. Trust plummets. Suddenly there's no flexibility. You're walking on minefields, Covey says. You have to measure every word.
It becomes tension city.
Tension city, memo heaven, constant defensiveness, protecting my backside, politicking. Sadly, that sounds like a lot of workplaces, and even some families, doesn't it?
It really does.
And in that environment, any technique, no matter how slickly applied, a forced smile, pretending to listen when your track record shows you don't care.
People see right through it.
They see right through it. It feels manipulative because the fundamental trust isn't there. That smile isn't a deposit, it's another withdrawal. It actually makes things worse.
Well, this isn't just about one-on-one relationships. This applies big time in organizations too, right? Like trying to build company culture.
Absolutely critical. Think about companies trying for employee engagement or customer loyalty. If it's just slogans and superficial perks, but the underlying respect isn't there, it falls flat.
You can't fake genuine care at scale.
No. Covey uses IPM as an example. Their stated beliefs were dignity of the individual, excellence, and service. And crucially, these weren't just posters on the wall. They permeated the culture, almost like osmosis, creating real shared values and personal security.
And he gives that anecdote, right, about the sick employee.
Yeah, the story where IBM arranged a helicopter and a special plane to fly a very sick employee home to California, no expense spared. And the key detail is, for the people involved, it was no surprise.
Because it aligned with their core values.
Exactly. It was a tangible expression of dignity of the individual. That wasn't a technique. It was character in action, flowing from their principles. That's the opposite of performative. And that, I think, is where the real power of Carnegie's advice could lie, if it's seen as an expression of these deeper values.
Building a culture of trust, not just learning a set of social tricks.
Precisely. It suggests that genuine connection isn't about following a script. It's about embodying principles.
Which brings us to empathy. How does empathy fit into this character-first picture? It feels absolutely essential.
Oh, empathy is non-negotiable for this approach. It's the engine of understanding others, which you need to make those authentic connections and bank account deposits.
You're right. You can't connect if you don't understand.
The Harvard Business Review material highlights this for difficult conversations. It says, trying to view the situation from your counterpart's perspective will help you develop the empathy needed. It's not just listening, it's actively trying to see the world through their eyes.
Their needs, their fears, their viewpoint.
Yeah, getting beyond the surface words to grasp their reality.
And Covey's habit, seek first to understand. That sounds great, but in a fast-paced negotiation or a heated argument, isn't it hard to slow down and really listen first?
It takes immense discipline, definitely, especially when you're under pressure to make your own case. But that's precisely when it's most powerful.
Because
Seeking first to understand allows you to get a comprehensive picture of the values and the concerns that need to be taken into account. It's empathy in action. And when you truly understand the other side's reality,
you can find better solutions.
exactly, you can move beyond compromise to what Covey calls third alternatives. These are genuinely new, win-win solutions that are mutually beneficial and is better than what either of them originally proposed.
So it's not just splitting the difference.
No, it's finding a bigger pie because you actually understand everyone's true needs. So again, if Carnegie's advice to encourage others to talk about themselves is used as a genuine tool for empathy, for seeking to understand,
Then it aligns with the character ethic.
yes. But if it's just a tactic to make them feel good so you can manipulate them later.
That's where it crosses the line into the personality ethic, the technique without substance.
Precisely. The intent transforms the technique.
Okay, so wrapping up this side of the argument. The character-first view really posits that inner transformation, genuine empathy, and core principles are the source of real social effectiveness. The outward behaviors, the techniques, are just the natural fruit of that inner state. It's about being, fundamentally.
Well put. If you cultivate the right inner landscape, the effective interactions should, in theory, follow more naturally.
All right. We've built a strong case for sincerity, for starting from the inside out. It feels, well, good, right, authentic. But let's pivot. What if the world doesn't always reward pure authenticity? What if mastering the technique, regardless of inner state, is actually the key to navigating social situations successfully?
This is the other side of the coin, and it's a powerful one. This view acknowledges that human behavior isn't entirely mysterious. It can be observed, understood, and yes, influenced using specific methods.
Like a science of interaction.
In a way, yes. Robert Cialdini's work, Influence, is a masterclass in this. He breaks down these principles of persuasion, things we often respond to automatically.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. There's reciprocity, that powerful urge we feel to return a favor. There's liking. We're just more easily persuaded by people we like. Social proof, looking to others to see how we should behave. Authority, deferring to experts.
Okay.
He also talks about consistency, our desire to be consistent with past commitments, and scarcity, wanting things more if they're rare. These are like psychological buttons.
And Carnegie's techniques, they push these buttons.
You could argue they often do, very effectively. Remembering names, smiling, showing interest, these can absolutely trigger the liking principle. Offering help or a small concession taps into reciprocity. Highlighting how many others agree uses social proof.
So the techniques work because they leverage our built-in psychological wiring.
Potentially, yes. And the crucial point here is you can push those buttons, you can use those techniques to make people feel good or influence their decisions without necessarily having a deep, heartfelt, authentic interest driving it. The technique itself can create the effect.
That feels a bit clinical, maybe even cynical. Does it take the humanity out of it?
It can feel that way, but think about communication itself. Cialdini uses that Hemingway example, the six-word story. For sale, baby shoes, never used.
Devastating.
Utterly. It evokes this incredibly deep emotional response, a whole narrative of loss. But was Hemingway pouring out his sincere grief at that exact moment? Probably not. It was a masterfully crafted technique using language.
The words themselves did the work.
Exactly. The technique, the precise arrangement of words, created the emotional impact, independent of the author's immediate inner state.
So the question becomes, can social techniques work the same way? Can you make someone feel understood or valued using the right phrase or action, even if you're not feeling it deeply inside?
And the technique perspective would say yes. It would say yes. Often they can. And this sharpens the debate around Carnegie. Are his methods teaching genuine connection? Or are they teaching the effective performance of connection? A smile can be real warmth, or it can be a learned technique to build rapport quickly.
So even if I'm just going through the motions, say remembering a name, because I know I should, could that still work, at least initially?
Absolutely. Especially in brief encounters or transactional settings, think about customer service. A well-executed script, using empathetic phrases, even if the agent is having a terrible day, can create a much better interaction than, say, blunt indifference.
It smooths things over, a social lubricant, as you said.
Yes. It taps into that liking principle Cialdini mentioned. If someone feels acknowledged, even through a standard technique, they're more likely to respond positively. The technique opens the door.
But the danger is...
The danger is if there's nothing behind that door. If the initial positive feeling created by the technique isn't followed up with actual substance or genuine consistency, it can backfire. People realize it was just a performance, and that initial goodwill can curdle into resentment.
Okay. So what specific social skills taught as techniques do we see in professional settings, like leadership?
Oh, loads. Daniel Goleman's work on emotional intelligence is key here. He defines social skill not just as being nice, but as concrete abilities.
Not just.
Things like proficiency in managing relationships and building networks. That's a skill you can learn and practice. An ability to find common ground and build rapport. Again, techniques exist for this. And persuasiveness.
These sound very results-oriented.
They are. Goleman links them directly to outcomes like effectiveness in leading change and expertise in building and leading teams. It's about using specific interpersonal actions to achieve goals. A leader might network strategically, not out of deep friendship, but to build necessary coalitions.
And the 1-Minute Manager book, that seems very technique-based, too.
Extremely. 1-minute praisings, 1-minute redirects. These are explicit behavioral recipes for managers to follow to be effective. The focus is on how the specific timed interaction to get a desired outcome.
So you praise because it's the technique, not necessarily because you're overcome with spontaneous admiration.
Potentially, yes.
Yeah.
Now, the hope might be that the technique also fosters genuine appreciation over time, but the starting point is the prescribed action. And this really puts the finger on the Carnegie dilemma. Is remembering a name a technique for effectiveness or an expression of genuine value? The technique might work for the immediate goal, but its deeper impact depends on that sincerity question.
Which brings us back to that uneasy feeling. If the focus is purely on technique for results, how easy is it to slide into just performing or even manipulating people? Like that person working the room you mentioned, you see the technique and it almost pushes you away.
That line can get incredibly blurry. It's often less a line and more of a gray zone, especially when the underlying intent isn't genuine care or honesty. Michael Lewis's Liar's Poker paints a vivid picture of this in finance. He describes how investment bankers were coached to talk about the challenges, the thrill of the deals, the high-caliber people, but never about the money,
Even though money was the main driver.
the obvious, overwhelming driver. Lewis writes, learning a new lie was easy. Believing it was another matter. That's a huge disconnect between the performance, the technique of communication, and the actual motive.
A calculated performance.
Absolutely. And the description of bond traders as toll takers, possessing the treasure for a magic microsecond and taking a cut.
Hmm.
That's the art, the highly refined technique for extracting value, not necessarily based on sincere client relationships.
So applying Carnegie's techniques without genuine regard for the other person, that starts to look like manipulation.
That's the core criticism, isn't it? If you're using these methods simply as tools to get what you want, treating the other person as a means to your end, rather than genuinely engaging with them as a person,
Yeah.
it crosses into manipulative territory.
It feels like in some environments, sincerity is almost a disadvantage. The performance is the reality.
Machiavelli certainly thought so, didn't he? In The Prince, his advice is brutally pragmatic. A ruler should aim to inspire fear in such a way that if he does not win love, he avoids hatred.
Focus on avoiding the negative, not necessarily achieving genuine positive feelings.
Exactly. And his advice to abstain from seizing property because men more quickly forget the death of their father than the loss of their patrimony, that's pure calculation.
Chillingly practical.
Its technique is strategy, completely divorced from internal virtue or sincerity. The outcome is everything.
And we see echoes of this in corporate politics, too.
Oh, definitely. The power of habit touches on this, describing the calculus. If you play too rough, your peers will unite against you. But if you focus on boosting your own department strategically, rather than undermining your rival, you'll probably get taken care of over time.
So it's a technique for navigating social dynamics for personal gain.
Right. Actions are calibrated for perceived benefit, for navigating the power structures, not necessarily out of genuine connection or collaboration. And this is where a purely technical reading of Carnegie could lead training for skillful social maneuvering, where the smile isn't about warmth, it's a calculated political move.
So, wrapping up this side, techniques are undeniably powerful. They can achieve specific results, leverage psychology, and are essential in many professional contexts. But run wild, without a grounding in something deeper, they risk becoming hollow, performative, or even deceptive. The flawless performance might win the battle but lose the war for real connection.
That sums up the tension nicely.
Okay, we've laid out both sides. The power of genuine inside-out sincerity versus the effectiveness of outward learned techniques. They both seem compelling in their own ways. So the big question is, can they coexist? Or are they fundamentally pulling in opposite directions when it comes to real human connection? Where do they meet and where do they diverge?
This is where it gets really interesting and potentially quite difficult. The biggest problems seem to crop up when techniques are just floating free, completely detached from any sincere core or guiding principle.
Like tools without a purpose.
Exactly. Covey hits this again. He suggests techniques should serve principles. He uses the example of family planning. In light of these principles like love, respect, what are the goals we're going to work on? What are our action plans, the techniques to accomplish our goals and actualize these values?
So there's a clear hierarchy. Principles first, then values, then techniques as action plans.
Yes, the techniques aren't the point in themselves. They're the means to live out something deeper. So that Carnegie technique, smiling, remembering a name, it only really has lasting positive power if it's done in light of a principle like respect or genuine interest. Otherwise,
So it's an empty gesture.
empty and often easily detected as inauthentic over time.
Which explains why quick fixes often fail, right? If you're just slapping a technique onto a deeper problem.
You're just treating the symptom. Covey calls these the band-aids of the personality ethic. He warns that these superficial efforts, these quick fixes and techniques, ultimately bring counterproductive results. They might temporarily obscure the chronic pain, but they don't heal it.
So a key distinction is whether the technique is rooted in character or just a surface-level personality fix.
That's the crucial difference. And this applies directly to how we read Carnegie. Is his advice a set of band-aids to make your personality seem more appealing without any real internal shift? Or is it guidance on how to express a genuinely developing character ethic?
Because if it's just the Band-Aid,
It might win you a brief interaction, but it won't build lasting trust. It could even backfire as people sense the insincerity.
and we saw examples where this focus on performance over fidelity, on the technique over the substance, actually causes harm.
Yeah, the liar's poker example is stark. The greater the praise lavished upon a salesman, the greater the eventual suffering of the customer. The technique of great selling was optimized for the salesman's gain, often directly at the customer's expense.
The performance masked a lack of actual care or ethical consideration.
Precisely. The external appearance was successful, but the internal fidelity wasn't there. And that's the danger zone for any purely technique-driven approach, including a superficial take on Carnegie.
Oh.
If the goal is just to win or influence for yourself, the relationship becomes transactional, potentially harmful, and definitely not genuine connection.
It really brings up that tricky question of intention. Can using a technique ever be truly genuine? If I consciously decide to apply a technique, say active listening, because I know it builds rapport, does the conscious application of the technique automatically make it less sincere, even if my underlying intention is good?
That's a fantastic question, and it really gets to the core of authenticity, doesn't it? Think about strategy in business. Richard Rumelt, in Good Strategy, Bad Strategy, warns against bad strategy that avoids the hard work.
How so?
He says it often floats above analysis, logic, and choice, relying on wishful thinking or template-style strategy. It looks like strategy, it uses the language of strategy, but it avoids the tough work of diagnosis and making real choices.
Like a performance of strategy instead of the real thing.
Exactly. It mirrors avoiding the hard work of developing genuine character and opting for easy social techniques instead. It's the appearance over substance. You go through the motions, apply the template, but without the deep understanding or commitment.
So the technique feels hollow because the foundational work hasn't been done.
Right. And Simon Sinek, with Start With Why, offers the positive counterpoint. He argues that truly great leaders never lose sight of their core purpose, their
Or
sincerity.
the inner drive.
Yes. And critically, he says they hold themselves accountable so that how they do things and what they do, the techniques, the actions, serve as tangible proof of that underlying WY.
Ah, so there's alignment.
Powerful alignment. The technique isn't separate from the purpose, it's the authentic manifestation of it. When that happens, the technique feels genuine because it flows directly from a deeply held belief or intention. A smile driven by a real why, to connect, to show value, lands very differently than one deployed as a mere tactic.
Okay, so the key isn't necessarily to ditch techniques. They're useful, even essential tools.
Absolutely.
But it's about ensuring they're extensions of a genuine core of your character, of your why. They shouldn't be substitutes for it. The how and what need to serve the why.
Beautifully put. And the long-term health of relationships really bears this out. Covey's point about marriage is relevant here. If that large reserve of trust isn't constantly replenished by genuine deposits,
The relationship degrades.
it deteriorates. Communication shifts from rich, spontaneous understanding to mere accommodation or even hostility and defensiveness. It shows that relationships built only on performance or surface-level techniques are fragile. They lack the resilience that comes from that authentic foundation.
The short-term gains from technique alone just don't last,
They don't. It takes continuous, genuine investment.
which requires a certain internal discipline, doesn't it, to resist the shortcuts, the purely performative actions.
Immense discipline. It's like navigating the psychological pitfalls in investing, as Howard Marks describes in The Most Important Thing Illuminated. He talks about overcoming greed, fear, suspension of disbelief, conformism, envy, ego,
All things that can distort judgment.
and exactly the kinds of pressures that push us towards performative or self-serving techniques in social situations too. The solution, Mark says, is for the thoughtful actor, investor, or social participant to recognize them, stand against them. Reason must overcome emotion.
So maintaining sincerity requires conscious effort against these internal and external pressures.
It really does. And viewed this way, Dale Carnegie's techniques, when integrated with that internal discipline, guided by a conscious, ethical why, can become incredibly powerful tools for positive influence and genuine connection. But without that internal grounding,
They risk being just instruments of fleeting, ultimately hollow social success.
leaving everyone involved feeling a bit empty, probably.
Wow. This deep dive has really laid bare that core tension, hasn't it, between genuine character and learned social technique. We've seen the profound strength of that inside-out approach Covey champions, building trust through real courtesy, kindness, empathy, making those emotional bank account deposits.
Yes, suggesting that Carnegie's methods are at their best when they're authentic expressions of that inner core, not just standalone tricks.
But then on the flip side, we can't deny the sheer power of technique. Cialdini's principles of influence, Goleman's social skills for leadership, these things work.
They absolutely do. The crucial difference, as we've explored, seems to be whether they're just band-aids, part of that superficial personality ethic, or if they are the visible, authentic proof of a deeper character ethic, driven by a clear why.
So Carnegie's advice isn't necessarily one thing or the other, it's how you use it, right? The intent behind the action.
Exactly. The tools are neutral. It's the user, their character, their purpose that defines the impact.
So for everyone listening, the next time you're thinking about your interactions at work, at home, maybe pause and consider the foundation you're building on. Are you just aiming for the right outcome, the successful performance?
Or do your actions genuinely flow from an inner intention, an authentic interest in the other person, grounded in principles like trust and respect?
It brings up a final thought for you to ponder. Where in your own life have you seen technique without sincerity maybe win a moment but ultimately feel hollow or even damage a connection?
And conversely, where have you seen a truly genuine, character-driven approach, maybe even using some learned skills, thoughtfully transform a difficult situation into something unexpectedly positive and lasting?
We hope this deep dive encourages that reflection, measuring not just what you do, but who you're becoming as you interact with the world, making sure your outer game truly reflects your inner self. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.